Hello and welcome to the Kieran Show. It's just Big Kieran this week because Kieran has taken all of the painting agendas up until this point. I think he's got 2 out now, which is crazy work, and he's about to do another one with Fist of the First Templar. We've had this one recorded, done since May, I think. We just haven't released it, so surprise, Space Wolves aren't relevant anymore, but I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, so we're going to be going over the Chaos Wolves new scheme that I've done. So I filmed this back in May, obviously, as I just mentioned, but yeah, so it's going to be fun for both of us going over it one more time. But yeah, so I always find with painting, Kieran is a lot more methodical, technical, incredibly gifted individual, but he takes too long. That's not my vibe. I do not paint for ages on end. I paint armies. My objective is to get the armies on the table as fast as possible with as little work as possible, whilst it also looking kind of good. So you'll find in this one, it could probably be a little bit chaotic, which I suppose is on brand. But yeah, if you've got any questions, any reservations, any, I don't know, heinous comments that you're like, wow, you're an idiot, please also put that down below, and then I'll read that and remind myself never to do this again.
Wow, you're an idiot!
Thank you so much for the people in the comments. But yeah, we're actually going to be starting with the miniature being black, so prime that in whichever colour you want. I think I used the Colour Forge out of cans. Yeah, which feels absolutely insane given that it's a white miniature. OMG. But yeah, we're going to be starting with that. So grab your airbrush if you have one. If you don't have one, I'd suggest doing these steps with dry brushes. Sorry to the people that don't have an airbrush. You can get some for really cheap. And before I hear you in the comments be like, you don't tell me how to use my money. I'm not, you're watching my video. So sorry. So yeah, so with your airbrush, add a little bit of AK Flow Improver to that. You can use whichever flow improver you want. I'm not sponsored by AK, not endorsed by them. It's just what I've got. So that's cool. So yeah, so maybe like a couple of drops into this with Burnt Umber, and we're going to be base coating the entire miniature in Burnt Umber. For the next highlight, we're going to be using Burnt Umber and Luminous Flesh, both from AK. We want a bit of a one-to-one mix with this one. You will find that the Luminous Flesh doesn't make too much of a difference, but it does brighten up that brown. We're just going to be covering all of the highlighted areas of the miniature, so literally just going straight down from top to bottom, and before we obviously build up those lighter highlights in a moment. And now, straight afterwards, we're going to be using Luminous Flesh. Haha, we've never used this paint before. Oh yes, we just did. We are going to be covering all of the areas that the light would hit to create some of those shadowed effects. We are going to reinforce those shadows in just a moment, but for now we are going to be using Luminous Flesh over the top. Next up, to create that contrast, we're going to be using a contrast paint. Haha! We're going to be using Shyish Purple from the Citadel GW range. I actually think this is a really great one. I've been using this on a couple of my schemes, I think. So I did it for the Thousand Suns as well. So through the airbrush, we're going to add a little bit of flow improver to it. Not too much because it's already got that quite nice consistency anyway for an airbrush. But we're going to be hitting the model literally from the underside. So literally tilt it towards you, as we can see in the video, and just spray all of like the underside of each of the panels that you can see. Hit that with the purple. You might be questioning that this is a bit of a stark contrast. It is, but we will dye that down in a minute. But for now, yeah, I think it looks pretty good. And then for that last highlight on the top, we're going to be using Bold Titanium White from Pro Acryl. This is my favourite white on the market. It's my go-to. It's my goat, as the kids say. Gross. But yeah, Kieran has been telling me for weeks and months and whatever, oh, go buy Tamiya, whatever. If you want to buy Tamiya, do whatever you want. I could not care less. I am a creature of habit. I like my paints. I like the way I do things. This gives me anxiety. So yeah, I just like using Bold Titanium White. Next up, for the first steps on the metallics, we're going to be using Heavy Metal from Army Painter. This one actually came in the John Blanche paint set. I actually picked up both of these sets. I'm a bit of a simp. I think I've used nearly all of the paints in it. It's really, really great. Again, not endorsed by Army Painter. If you want to go buy it, buy it. But yeah, I've really, really enjoyed it. This is my go-to when it comes to metals. I think it's just about dark enough that you can build up some really great highlights with it. But then in tandem, it's got like a really great coverage. And I know that people say that about paint all the time. Well, the coverage is good. yeah, it is what it is, sorry. Next, we're going to be covering all of the trim on the miniature. We're going to be using 950 Vallejo Black. Another one that Kieran's been like, oh, I found a better black now. I don't care, I'm still using this one. I think it's thick enough that even when you thin it down, I think it's still really great. The coverage is good, but also it dries like really matte, which is perfect. I don't really like satin miniatures at all. Sorry if that's your bag, just ain't mine. You will notice, obviously, that it's a very white miniature and very black. So you want to be thinning this down to a point where it's kind of easier, I should say, to clear it with like a wet brush if you need to. Go really slowly, just make sure you're covering all of the bits of trim that you can spot. If at any point you do get a little bit too much black on the white, don't panic, just clean your brush immediately, and then whilst the brush is still wet, just make sure that you're wiping all of that excess black away. You will find that you'll create like a little bit of a shadow, but don't panic, it's not the end of the world. Next up, we're going back to Burnt Umber, and we're going to be covering all of the pelts, and a little bit of fairy bits of gubbins, and all the scrolls and stuff on his staff, I think. I don't know why I put it to my shoulder, it's the staff. Yeah, so just get a nice even base coat on all of these. We're going to be going over this one with some dry brushes later on, but yeah, not too complicated, and using some of the paints that we already have. And next we're going to be using Kantor Blue. This is a Citadel DW paint. You can use this one if you want, don't if you don't. It's just we want like a decent blue base coat. We will eventually be progressing, to more of like a baby blue. So just pick whichever base coat you want, really. It's just what I have and what I've been using. Next up, it's time for the wash of the entire miniature, and where traditionally, or I used to certainly, use a lot of enamel paints and, you know, streaking grime from AK. I got a bit dependent on it, I will be honest, and it made me incredibly lazy as a painter. So I used to do it on every single miniature ever, and I think my curtain call was actually on a polyphron? I can't remember what it is. The giant, enormous knight from Forge World. That was the last miniature I did, I think, with a full wash with streaking grime, and it was a mess, and I probably got sun poisoning in some capacity, shaved a few years off my life. Sorry to everybody that would care. But yeah, so since then I've swapped over to oils, and we're actually going to be using the Winsor and Newton ones. So I've got Burnt Umber and Ivory Black. I've gone with like a 50-50 split on these ones, and we're going to be adding some White Spirit, whichever one you choose or you use or whatever. I go with like a bit of an odorless thinner. Yeah, do what you want, I don't mind. And we want to create a consistency where it's just about enough where it sort of looks like a wash, but it's enough, I'm trying to think of the words that I use. You'll see it in the video. But yeah, and then we want to cover the entire miniature in this and make sure that it dries totally. So I would suggest a bit of a 24-hour gap, just to make sure that it is perfectly dry. What we're going to be doing now is sealing all of those oils in with some matte varnish. I'm going to be using Vallejo just through an airbrush. You can add it via brush if you're using dry brushes and stuff that I've said before. But obviously just make sure you've thinned it down enough that you're getting like a decent consistency across the whole miniature. And the last thing you want is for it to clog up and all the rest of it on the miniature, because it can look really minging. But just be really careful with this step. Next, we're going back to the John Blanche paint set from Army Painter. Woo! I'm going to be using the speed paint from this. It's called Bloodmoon Red, I think. Checks notes, Bloodmoon Red. This I think I've used on nearly every single scheme since I acquired this paint. I think when it comes to that sort of like liquid blood in a bottle, gross, it's pretty great. I also like it when it's thinned down to thinned down enough. You actually get this really nice saturated red wash, which we will be sort of manipulating in this. This is, I don't know, totally your creative license. Paint it wherever the hell you want, and I think it's pretty heretical and pretty chaos to do that. If you want to have loads of tattoos and loads of markings made with blood everywhere, you do what you want. Go get it, girl. And then we're just going to be building up that paint layer by layer, just so it's thick and obvious enough that, yeah, it looks pretty great on the miniature. And then there are bits on the mini which I've gone with sort of like a dried blood, sort of like blood buildup, which is really gross. So thinning it down with a little bit of water and then adding it layer by layer, letting it dry, adding another layer, will really create that buildup, which is great. Okay, so we're going to go back to the fur now on the wolf pelts, and we're going to be using grey brown from AK and then ivory white from Army Painter. So we're just going to be grabbing our dry brush and then dry brushing each of those colours to finish off the fur. Next up for the teeth and claws, we're going to be using Decomposed Flesh from AK. I just want like a decent coverage to create that nice little base layer effect. After, we're going to do something a little bit unconventional. Most people would use washes in any capacity, like, I don't know, like a proper wash. But I actually went back to Burnt Umber to create, I suppose, like a similar, comparison to the initial base coat for the I don't know what I'm talking about, it's all rubbish really. So yeah, just thin down the Burnt Umber enough to cover the Decomposed Flesh. I'd probably go with like a 1:3, 1:4 ratio of paint to water. You'll have like a bit of a cloudy finish over the top, but it will dry in such a way that will morph. It'll be nice. So we're going to be highlighting the scrolls with Decomposed Flesh and Ivory White as a bit of a 1-to-1 mix. And then straight after that, we're going to be keeping with Ivory White and we're going to be highlighting all of the edges on the Ceramite armor for the Space Wolf itself, which is very cool. You can be super frivolous with this one if you want, so have like loads of scratches all over the shop. It is a Chaos miniature, sorry, Ceramite loyalist fans. Yeah, so you can just have a real good time with this one. You'll notice that I kept it kind of neat, kind of tidy with like the odd scratch everywhere else. I think I find with a lot of highlights, you can create a lot of attention across the entire miniature, where I wanted to make sure that the blood and all of like the kind of markings were the highlight instead. And now we're going to be highlighting the black on the trim of the Space Marine as well, which is going to be pretty cool. So I'm going to be using dark grey and neutral grey from Vallejo. We're going to be building up those layers. We want it to be thin enough that you are going to be building up those highlights. Especially for the flat panels, you want to be watering it down and really creating that layered effect. And when you're doing, you know, maybe some of the thinner lines or the edge highlights on the shoulder pads especially, you can maybe just keep it a little bit thicker if you want to add that more of a scratchy effect rather than build up the colour. It's totally your choice. But yeah, have some fun. What we want now is to create like a bit of depth on the wolf head. So I'm going to be mixing 1-to-1 with black and burnt umber to create that shadowed effect. Thin this down with a little bit of water. We just want to make sure that there is that heavy contrast, especially underneath the eyes. And then what we're going to do after that's dried is really thin down the Bloodmoon paint again. Earlier I was talking about creating that wash effect. I find with this one, it makes it a little less like drab and covered in like dried blood or whatever, whereas we were doing that over the armor. But this makes it kind of cohesive. So you've got that tinge of red across the entire miniature now. I've been doing this with a lot of my other paints. It's probably why I've nearly finished the entire bottle in the short space of time I've had it. But yeah, I think it's liquid gold for sure. In keeping with the Spaceballs, the highlight for the blue, we're just going to be using Russ Grey straight out of the bottle. Because it is a layer paint, you don't have to thin it down if you don't want to. I don't think that I did. So I just obviously straight out of the bottle, which is great. And then we're just going to be building up that progression from the darker blue to the light, which is good. Next up, we're going to be doing the metallic highlights all over the miniature. I've gone with Mythril Blade from Duncan Rhodes' Too Thin Paints range. This is actually really good, sorry, and very, very bright, which is exactly what we want for those sort of scratchy highlights. On the smaller, harder to reach places, I'd suggest using like a 0 or a 00 brush. But if you've got some of those larger areas that you just want to add some like kind of scratches to, I'd get your like a tiny little bit of sponge, just, you know, like a kitchen sponge or whatever, just rip a corner off and almost like just like dot it on. You want like enough on the sponge that it is, yeah, it's, I don't know, like appearing sort of like dry brush, I suppose, but using a sponge instead. I've said sponge too much, I'm going to move on. Next up, we're going to be painting the face. So the three colours I've chosen are Base Flesh, Light Flesh, and Luminous Flesh from AK. I'm not going to be super technical and tell you how to paint faces, because truthfully, there's amazing tutorials out there which you should probably watch after you finish this one. But I will be building up layer by layer, just creating that really nice tone, I suppose, over the faces, and with the highlights, catching the areas that the sunlight would hit, but making sure that you can do some like little wet blends and stuff if you want to. But again, I won't go too technical with it because there are people out there that are far better than I am, and I've already waffled on way too much, so sorry, but also thank you. And then for the wolf's beard, I've got the 2 greys we used before as well as the white. We want to be doing like a bit of a wet blend from this one. So starting with that dark grey and building up the highlights towards the edge of the beard, and then maybe just catching the edges of the beard with the white if you want to. But we're not going to be super, I don't know, yeah, not going to be worrying about this too much because it's just a beard, and if it looks a little bit dirty or a little bit scraggly, that's absolutely fine. Because next we're actually going to be watering down that Bloodmoon red one more time, blood, and we're going to be adding that all to the beard as well. Again, similar to the wolf, we don't want him to have like a bloody beard because that's really weird and, you know, probably not very Space Wolfy or Chaos Wolfy for that matter. But again, it really helps create that overall red tone that you've got across the miniature. Not super stark, but again, making it very cohesive. In keeping with the Bloodmoon red, we're going to be adding some final little glyphs and runes over the miniature, including everything that is on the scrolls as well. Again, you can be as frivolous as you like with this one, but build them up gently with a very thin brush. If it is a little bit messy and you've got runes and blood absolutely everywhere, it doesn't really matter because it's kind of in keeping with what it is. But yeah, have some fun. For the leather details over the miniature, I've just gone with a grey brown from AK and Banshee brown from Army Painter. You can do this in whichever way you want. I think for this miniature, I used like a 1-to-1 for this and just added it straight on, and using some of the Banshee brown as like a bit of a scratch highlight. But in truth, you could do whichever you want. It's your miniature. Okay, we're in the closing stages now. Our wolf is starting to look very much like a Chaos Wolf, which is exactly what we want. However, we have hit a bit of a non-negotiable again. So when it comes to creating that sort of frosty blue effect in some of the OSL spaces, you can actually do this via brush if you want to. I'd suggest doing it with thin layers and building up or whatever. But if you are using an airbrush, follow these steps. So for example, with the Axe Head and some of the, what are they called on wolves? The little triangle trinkets? I'm getting nothing from Kieran. Those little things that are triangles or whatever on the, I can't remember what they're called, the little pendants. Maybe that's it. Yeah, so we want to initially just paint it in like a strip of white. I'd probably suggest having like a few thin layers for this one, just to make sure that the coverage is really nice. I think when you are hitting it with the blue straight after this, you want to make sure that it is really clean underneath. I think that's probably like the most important step for this bit. And then through the airbrush, we are going to be using Frostheart. This is a contrast paint I think I picked up from an old Votan tutorial from Darcy Bono Paints on Instagram. I think she's got a YouTube or a Twitch or something. But yeah, she's really brilliant. You should go check her out. But yeah, so Frostheart I was introduced to a few years ago when it came out with obviously all the new contrasts and stuff. But I absolutely love it, and it's my go-to for any blue OSLs. So we're going to be covering that with the airbrush. Again, you could do it with use it with a paintbrush if you wanted to. And we're going to be doing like a bit of a back and forth between the white and the contrast paint as well, to create that layered effect, but also create that appearance of OSL as well. Eventually, it should look a little bit like what I've got on the screen. If you've got any questions around this step, or you'd like to see maybe a bit more fleshed out on how we do OSL, let us know down below, because we've got a few colours that we're getting kind of dandy at this point, or maybe not dandy, but certainly more comfortable. But yeah, let us know down below. And there we have it. Your Chaos Wolf is officially finished. Cue the lights and the fireworks and the pillaging and the burning, because they're Vikings and stuff, which is very cool. But yeah, if you wanted to know how we do some of the basing and stuff for Chaos Wolves, we are planning on actually doing a basing video later this year. We've got lots of different schemes, lots of different things that we do, and since speaking to Kieran, he was always saying, oh, it's always at the end of the video, nobody really cares about basing, blah, 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 especially when you get to the end of a tutorial. So what we're going to do is just make a whole basing video. I'll be probably talking a lot about pigments, whereas Kieran would be talking a lot about process, which is obviously perfect. His is process driven and mine is more chaotic and, you know, unhinged. But we will be touching on that a little bit later in the year, so stick around for that one and find out. If you enjoyed this video, please write me some nice things down below, because this is the first time I've done anything like this, or at least for a long time, and Kieran has really set the bar very, very high, and I was incredibly anxious walking into this one. But yeah, let us know down below if you enjoyed it, if you'd like to see some other ones. I know that we've got lots of different schemes. I know that Kieran's obviously smashing it out with some Space Marines. I've got some more Xenos and Chaos things to do. Also some Old World bit to do before the end of the year as well. If you want to see anything, just let us know down below. That would be perfect. If you'd like to buy some Space Wolves, or Chaos Space Wolves for that matter, you can't buy those, but you could buy some Chaos Marines. Click the links down below, that'd be fabulous. And also a huge thank you to the Council of Kieran's. Boom! On the left-hand side. You guys are fabulous and we love you, and yeah, you keep us up at night with your love, and that's great, and I should probably stop talking. Peace and love, bye!